All right. Good morning. I don't know, I've kind of been liking this one service thing. Wake up at 8 and you don't have to rush to try and be on church at time. You're just like, all right, I don't have church till 10. For those of you who aren't usually with us, usually we run 2 services. For the past 2 weeks, because of New Year's and Christmas, we decided we'd do 1 service in the morning and just then you guys go about your day and plan accordingly. So, first off, I want to say Happy New Year's, and I don't know, who here uses the YouVersion app? Anybody? Okay, I'm going to do a little product placement from the pulpit. I don't know if that's terrible or not, but YouVersion is it's a little app you can have on your cell phone. Basically, I just wanted to bring up today that they have a verse every day, and the verse of the day today is actually pretty cool. It's the old life is gone and now the new life has begun. I thought that was an awesome way to kind of like bring back the New Year's. The old you is gone, the new you is here, and I thought that was really cool. So I wanted to throw that out there. And if you don't use the YouVersion app, it's really convenient. You can take notes. You can look up whatever verses you want. It's an awesome thing to have. So I just want to thank you all for coming out here. I want to throw this out there as well. My throat is not really working with me today, so if I stop at any point and kind of like, just bear with me. My whole family's been getting sick throughout the whole Christmas season, so that's been kind of frustrating, and just coming over that right now. But if we have our Bibles, could we open up to John chapter 18, verse 28? We'll start there. And we're gonna start off. I'm not gonna give you a title or anything right away. The title will actually come after we read some scripture. So we're gonna start in chapter 18, verse 28, and I'll give you guys a second to get there. All right, so we're starting in verse 28. Now, to kind of put this a little more into context, what's happened now is Judas has already betrayed Jesus. He's been captured. He's being taken by the chief priests to go face whatever judgment they have in mind. So we pick up here at verse 28, which says, "Then they led Jesus to Caiaphas into Praetorium, and it was early." So it was early in the morning. "And they themselves did not enter the Praetorium, so that they would not be defiled, but would be able to eat Passover." So what's happening here is they're taking him. They've already decided he's guilty. He's guilty. So they're taking him to Caiaphas because he's Jewish, and usually he would fall under Jewish law, Jewish jurisdiction, and he would have to face whatever punishment they had. But they had something else in mind. They had something very specific in mind for him. And in order to get that to happen, they had to take him to the Praetorium where Pontius Pilate, who's the governing element of that area, resides. So they bring him there, but they didn't want to enter because if you were Hebrew or Jewish and you touched a Gentile is anybody who is not a believer, who's not Jewish. If you even touch them, you were legally defiled, and you were dirty, and you were unclean ceremonially, which means you couldn't participate in religious activities. Well, this was the Passover. So they wanted to be part of that. So they wouldn't actually enter the Praetorium. They just stood outside of it with Jesus and waited. And then, so now in verse 29, we have Pontius Pilate coming to them. So Pilate went to them and he said, "What accusations do you bring against this man?" Verse 30, they answered and said, "If this man were not an evildoer, would we bring him to you?" So they're saying, look, he's already guilty. We don't need you to judge him. We don't need that. He's already guilty. So Pilate responds to them and says, "Well, take him yourself and judge him according to your law." And the Jews said, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death." So Pilate at this point is like, okay, you come here in the morning, you stand outside, you won't come in, and when I come to you, you tell me he's guilty. Okay, take care of it. What do you want me to do? Well, then they explain, well, under Roman law, we can't put him to death, but we think he deserves to die. So now Pilate has to make that call. Verse 32, "To fulfill the word of Jesus, which he spoke, signifying by what kind of death he was about to die." So Jesus had predicted his death in John 12:32 and John 3:14. He had predicted this death would happen. Verse 33, Therefore Pilate entered again in the praetorium and summoned Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Now that seems like an awkward way to kind of start off a conversation. If I invite you into my house and you walk in and the first thing I ask you is, "Are you the king or queen of the Jews?" You're probably going to be a little upset. So let's put that into context. The reason he's asking this is we see in Luke's gospel, actually, in Luke 23:2, the Jews, when they brought him before Pilate, they accused him of being a rebel and stating that he was the king of the Jews, which was blasphemy. So that is where he's getting this from. He's not just randomly asking the question. When they brought him there originally, that was what they were claiming that he had said and why he is guilty and needs to be punished by death. So he's asking him now, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus answers him saying, "Are you asking this? Are you saying this of your own initiative, or did the others tell you about me?" Is he saying, did you hear this from other people, or is this a judgment call of your own? Are you asking me on your own initiative, or going off of what everyone else has said about me without actually asking me beforehand? Pilate answers him in 35 saying, "I am not a Jew, am I? For your own nation and your own chief priest delivered you to me. What have you done?" Here he's saying, "I'm not Jewish, so I can't make that call if you're the king of the Jews or not. Honestly, it's not even really relevant to me unless you're a threat to Rome. But if you didn't make this claim that you're the king of the Jews and you're not a threat to Rome, what have you done that has made them so angry that they want you dead?" Jesus answers him in 36, saying, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm." So this is more proof of God's planning and how much bigger it is than our own. See, at the time, the Jews had thought that Jesus, or the Messiah, was going to be this great military warrior. He was going to be this political figure that was going to force Rome out and free the Jews. It was going to be another one of the judges scenario, like Samson and such. He would come in, he would take care of the Romans, and it would bring about a new age in the Israelites' life. So what's happening, though, is the exact opposite of that. And they're not understanding that. But that's the planning that God has. He's thinking, and his plan is not just for the Jews. Yeah, a war would save the Jews, but a war wouldn't fulfill the ultimate goal that God had in mind, to save the entire world. Moving on to verse 37. Therefore Pilate said, "So you are a king?" And Jesus answered, "You are correct in saying that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, to testify the truth. Everyone who hears the truth, everyone who is of the truth, hears my voice." That's deep. So I wonder what Pilate's response to that was. Verse 38, Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" And walked away. What is truth? So in order to define what truth is, that's the topic of discussion. That's the title of the sermon, so to speak, is what is truth? And the reason I bring this up is because we have a lot of confusion in today's world. So in order to answer that question of what is truth, we're going to define it in broad terms first. So in today's culture, there's a movement or an ideal structure called postmodernism. And it started back in the 70s and has just been growing since then. And it was anti-dogma, it was anti-government, it was anti-war. Pretty much all the things that were forced upon that generation in that time period, they were rebelling against it. And it influenced art, entertainment, and education, and continues today it impacts almost every aspect of our lives. One of the prevailing claims that they have is that we should be skeptical of the truth, which is kind of confusing in and of itself, because if we're skeptical of the truth, what do we compare it to? How can we be skeptical? But maybe you've heard some of the claims that they've had is that there is no truth. Well, if that's true, then the statement is false. That's pretty confusing. Another one is there's no objective truth. Well, that only has two outcomes. Either it's objectively true for everyone that there is no objective truth, which means there is an objective truth, or it's a subject, which means it's your opinion, and I don't agree with it. Okay? How about science yields truth? Now, this is a big one. In today's world, we hear about science is going to disprove God. Science is anti-God, which is, it's not true in the slightest. Honestly, God created the heavens and the earth, right? So anything we discover within that realm is only going to prove more of his creation aspect than anything. And that's what science is. In fact, science doesn't say anything scientists do. Science is the process to gather information, and that raw information, that data, has to be interpreted by a scientist, and then he makes a claim off of it. Science itself doesn't say anything. Okay, so all these things together, we have truth exists. Okay, so truth exists, so what? Does truth matter? There's a joke I heard about a sheriff in Texas, a Wild West time period. A sheriff in Texas is tracking a bank robber, and he finally tracks him down to a bar in Mexico. So he goes in there, and he's ready. He walks up to the bartender, and he says, "I'm looking for this man. Have you seen him?" He says, "That's him over there on the table." "All right." He's like, "Well, wait. Before you go over there, he doesn't speak any English." The sheriff looks at him and says, "Well, you do, so why don't you translate?" Brings him over to the table. Sheriff says, "Ask him what his name is." Bartender asks him for his name. Man says, "My name is Jose Rivera." So he's like, "Okay, this is Jose Rivera. That's the man I'm looking for," says the sheriff. He says, "Now I want you to tell him that I want the money he stole from those banks, and I want it now. And if he doesn't give it to me, if he doesn't tell me where it is, I'm going to shoot." So the bartender says, okay, calm down. Looks at him, he says, "Look, the sheriff here says that he's looking for the money that you stole from the banks. And if you don't give it to him, if you don't tell him where it is, he's going to shoot." Jose looks at him, looks at the bartender, and he says, "All right, tell the sheriff that if he leaves the bar, makes a left, walks about 200 feet, he's going to see a well with a tree next to it. In between the well and the tree, if you dig about 3 feet down, you're going to find all the money in the bags from all the banks that I've robbed. It's all there. He can have it. Just leave me alone to drink." So the bartender says, "Okay." He looks at the sheriff and says, "Jose said to go ahead and shoot." Now that's kind of funny and all, but let's bring it back to real world terms now. So let's say that does truth matter? Let's say that somebody is accused of a heinous crime, and they're in the court, and the court case is happening, and the trial's on, and it's heated. If they did this crime, they're a horrible, terrible person, and they deserve to pay for the crime that they committed. But if they didn't actually commit that crime, their life could be ruined forever for something they never did. Does the truth matter in that scenario? I'd say it does. Somebody's life is going to be ruined forever based on that judgment call. So if truth matters in that small, particular scenario, that courtroom scenario, how much more so does truth matter over our lives, the period of our lives, or the meaning of life itself? How much more so does truth matter in that grand scheme scenario? So, okay, we've established that truth exists. Okay, obviously truth matters then. But, well then what is truth? We're still at that question of what is truth, though? What is it? Well, truth should be the ultimate pursuit in our life. We should be pursuing truth consistently. Truth contains two theories that make up what truth is. One is correspondence. How does each statement in the claim correspond to the other? The other is coherence, the theory of coherence. Do all the statements together in that truth claim have coherency? Truth must be logically consistent. It can't change. If it changes, then it wasn't true to begin with. It must be empirically adequate. Now, that's a big word. Empirically adequate just means that all the data, all the information has been researched and tested. It must be experientially relevant, meaning that it must be relevant to the scenario that it's in, that it's being questioned. Truth must answer any of the four following questions. Origin, where did I come from? Meaning, why am I here? Morality, what is right, what is wrong? Or destiny, where do I go? So when Pilate's asking that question, when he says, what is truth? He's looking for something that fits all that criteria. And what's Jesus' response to this? Let's look at verse 38 or 39 here. But at the end of verse 38, we hear Pilate saying that, after he'd said, "What is truth?" and started to walk away, he says, I found no guilt in Jesus. So now we pick up in verse 39. But it is your custom for me to release one prisoner during the Passover. Do you want me to release the King of the Jews? Verse 40. They shouted back, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." Now, Barabbas is kind of a weird character. He just pops up out of nowhere. But what we do know about Barabbas is that he was a thief, a thug, and a rebel that led some sort of uprising or insurrection. So their option was the King of the Jews, and they picked Barabbas, who was a thief, a rebel, and led some sort of uprising. So Barabbas' restrictions were removed, and he stepped down and began to walk away. And of course, he looked back at Jesus and said, "Thank you," as he walked off, right? No. There's no record of that. In fact, there's no more record of Barabbas from that point on. We don't know what happened to him. All we know is that he was freed from his restrictions, stepped off, and walked away, while Jesus stood there waiting for his death. And that's when it hits you. That's the truth. That's the truth that Jesus was talking about when he was talking to Pilate. The truth that met all that criteria Pilate was looking for. It was corresponding, it was coherent, it was logically consistent, empirically adequate, experientially relevant, and answered all four of those big questions. All four of them. We are Barabbas. We are Barabbas. And in order for us to go free from our chains, our bondage, and our restrictions, Jesus couldn't. He had to stand there. He had to die. And I think the disciples started to grasp that. And when they did, they began to realize that Jesus' kingdom was not of this world, so they weren't going to fight for it. No. They were going to do something else entirely. They were willing to die for it. Not fight for it, but die for it. The miracle of Lazarus had proved that Jesus had power over death. And you might say, well, calm down. Miracles, are they real? What's your truth? Where's the truth to that claim of miracles? Look around you. The greatest miracle of all happened in Genesis 1:1, when in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. He created everything from nothing. That is the greatest miracle, and we can see it everywhere. So if that's true, if God created the heavens and the earth, could he raise people from the dead? In fact, is it really dying, or is it just changing locations? Did he really bring Lazarus back, or did he just call him? Is it like me calling my wife from another room? I'm not trying to take away from the significant impact of a resurrection event. Merely stating that miracles are possible, and we see them. We see creation. We saw it happen. Well, we didn't see it happen, but we see the effects of it. In John 8:32, Jesus says to his disciples, speaking with them, and he's talking about his teachings and saying that if you understand them, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. To which we respond by asking Jesus, what is truth? And he looks right at us in John 14:6 and says, I am. What is truth, Jesus? I am. Now go, Barabbas, and be free. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before your throne this morning, excited for the year that we've had, Lord, but more excited for the year to come. As we reflect upon all the blessings that you've given us throughout the year, Lord, I pray that we wouldn't be caught up on whatever issues we're dealing with, Lord. Instead, that we would give them up to you and understand that this is a whole new year, Lord, a whole new time for us to bring meaning to our life and meaning to others around us, Lord, by talking about who you are. And this event, Lord, this you coming down from the heavens and giving up everything for us, Lord. Thank you so much for the time and the fact that we can wake up every morning, Lord.